If you've been thinking about purchasing a home or already in the process of purchasing a home in Northeastern Wisconsin and you're getting your teeth kicked in and you've tried to write offers and they're not getting accepted, this episode's for you. We're going to give you some great tips that can push things outside of the box to put you in the winner's circle. I've got a special guest, Adam Cook from Nations Lending, with us today. Super excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. What are you
Just
seeing?
trying to keep all our teeth today, right?
Yeah, you're definitely right there. What are you seeing in the market right now from a lending perspective? I know you've got a bunch of pre-approved buyers in your stable who are ready, willing, and able to purchase homes, and it's difficult out there. But I think we can help, provide some tips and some strategies that can get buyers in the winner's circle. So, what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's competitive, man. At the end of the day, there are a lot more buyers out there than there is inventory available, right? And, ultimately, some of the issue that we're seeing is that a lot of the buyers that are out there that had the, maybe that kind of the right now timing of looking at, well, my house isn't meeting my needs and I want to move up, and where they've got some great first time home buyer targeted type inventory, they're not necessarily moving right now, right? I mean, a lot of those homeowners have had the opportunity a couple years back when we had those COVID rates, as I like to call them. And there's a lot of people that are sitting at 3% or better type interest rates, and they're looking at the market right now and they're hesitant to get out there, right? So the inventory problem that we are facing, not just locally, but really at a national scale, is very real. So, tactically, it's about trying to figure out what can buyers be doing to really, set themselves apart from all the other financing type deals and stuff that they're going to be competing against.
Yeah, we have a lot of collaboration, with you guys, but also internally figuring out what it truly takes to win in advising home buyers on what it looks like on the winner's circle. When you're working with a lot of sellers, you can get some insight into some of the patterns and the trends. And I know that one of the things that you've been seeing in talking through with a lot of your customers is what's called appraisal gap coverage. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people need to probably understand better, but it is also probably one of the keys to unlocking and getting you in the winner's circle. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It's uncanny how often buyers right now that are willing and able to write in some sort of appraisal gap coverage, that's what it's taking to win, right? So, just from a financing perspective, just to kind of break that down 101 that a little bit, let's say an offer on a property is at 250 on a house that was listed at 225, right? If the seller thought that property was worth 250, they would have listed it there. So if the appraisal, which we are going to base all of our financing structure on, were to come in at, let's say, 235, maybe 240, now that seller has a concern, right? They liked that 250 number. They want that number, and they don't necessarily want to renegotiate that contract and come back down. Historically speaking, there was always more of a post-appraisal type conversation that would happen where there'd be a little bit of give and take and, back and forth, whatever, where there was going to be a potential price or contract reduction. But what we're seeing right now, again, is sellers don't want to do that. Buyers are aware of this, and they're going on the front side and they're saying, hey, yeah, I am going to write, 15, 20, 25 grand over, but I'm willing to cover an appraisal gap of whatever amount they want to put in, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. They could say, I don't care what the appraisal comes in at. I'll cover the entire gap, right? But back in my scenario example of a 250 contract with a 240 appraisal, now we get that $10,000 problem. If they've said, hey, I'm going to cover 5, okay, well, now the conversation and the negotiation is only about that last $5,000. If they've said 10, right, they're going to have to bring in that full 10 because we're 10 grand short. So it's really important for buyers to understand, one, that is extremely common right now, good, bad, or indifferent. It just is what it is. And it's, it just is going to be something they're going to run up against. So it's important when we're going through the pre-approval process, one is really just to be having that conversation with buyers so that they understand the dynamics of the market. But then two, to understand what sorts of options they're going to have to be able to do something like that. Right? Maybe they can get gift funds from a family member or a close friend, right? The gift fund rules have been changed in the last 6 to 12 months here, where both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have made it easier for us to source gift funds. Historically speaking, it's only been family members, but now, an interested party that's a close family friend is an allowable and, an approvable gift source, right? So maybe you've got somebody like that that's willing to help you if you need it, right? You could write in, you got a $10,000 appraisal gap willingness, but if it appraises out at the number, you don't need to go and do that. But at least you have it in your back pocket if that situation arises and you've written an offer that way. Other thing that is a really common kind of back pocket strategy is investment funds, right? You think about your 401ks or your Roths that aren't as liquid as some other types of investment accounts where you can't just go immediately turn that into cash. A lot of those accounts have access that they can file technically under a hardship withdrawal, where you can get those funds if you're purchasing a home and using those funds for your down payment and your closing costs, right? So both of those strategies are becoming extremely common. Fortunately, at least in my experience, so in the last handful of months here, appraisals have been keeping up with the market, generally speaking. When this strategy was first coming to be a little bit more normalized in about, a year and a half or so ago, the market and the appraisals were still kind of catching up with each other. And we were seeing a lot of the times, if they wrote in a $7,500 appraisal gap, guess what? We saw a $7,500 gap, right? And they were pretty much getting maxed out all the time. But it's been more common right now that appraisals have been coming in at or close to the number where we haven't even really needed to kick in that gap coverage. Obviously, every house or scenario is going to be different depending on how it was priced and kind of what, exactly what the comparable sales are going to look like there. But again, back pocket strategies, having those available really as a, potentially as a worst case scenario, but being able to do that is really going to help these buyers be able to win. I mean, I've seen more offers than I can count get accepted in the last few months here, where they're, the sweet spot is, 15, 20 grand over asking price, with probably about half of the overage written in as the appraisal gap. That really tends to be what the sellers are liking to see. I don't know what your experience is like with sellers necessarily, but that's what I'm seeing a lot on the buying side.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of scenarios, depending on the price range, where we're still getting 5, 10. Sometimes we had one listing in De Pere this last weekend that had over 20 offers. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about this appraisal coverage, basically the idea that if the appraisal comes in lower than the inflated purchase price, that the buyers will cover the difference. If you're a first-time home buyer, this is a pretty complex thing. And it's also, we're very educational about explaining this process. I would say that we probably talk more buyers out of purchasing a home right now if they're not going to be comfortable with some of the dynamics. And that's okay. There will be a time where they can come back in the market. I don't want somebody to do things that they're uncomfortable with. I know you don't either. And right. I think explaining a lot of this, and this is why we're filming these videos, so that you can get an idea of kind of the dynamics. I would also tell you that our agents here at Dallaire Realty are always talking to the listing agent, digging, trying to figure out how many offers they really have. Because there may be a scenario where there's a unicorn where maybe there's not 10 or 15 offers on it. And that's vital information for us to know. But when we do run into those, under $300,000 price range, brand new listing, that's what I would call buttoned up. It's got, updated, kitchens, flooring, bathroom, really the house that everyone would be attracted to. Those houses are the ones that are going crazy. I do think there's opportunities for anything over 10 days on the market, still extremely limited. And if you're not comfortable making up like an appraisal gap coverage, or, sometimes obviously a common thing that we also see is waiving inspections. That's not something we ever recommend. However, we have to explain the reality of the market when they've got 5, 10, 15 offers on a property. The majority of these are contingency free, where they're not making it contingent upon an inspection. Like I said, that's not what we recommend, but we're also not going to lie to you either about the dynamic of the market. And we'd rather you feel more educated. We'd rather educate you on the front end to save you a lot of time. And these are difficult conversations to have, Adam. I know you have these all day long, but do you agree that like knowing this ahead of time before they know what they're getting into is important?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, the general conversation flow when we're going through a pre-approval and really having that initial kind of consult, so to speak. It's, you know, it really looks a lot different now. And I think your point about not saying, hey, I agree with this, this is what you have to go do, but having buyers understand that this is just the dynamic of the marketplace right now. And again, a lot of it goes back to inventory, right? Even with this higher rate market, there are still far more buyers than there are sellers. And these are the strategies that people are using to win. And it is happening consistently, right? So if you're a buyer that isn't comfortable with that, that's okay. I tell people that all the time. I don't care if you buy a house right now or 2 years from now, we're not going anywhere. But it's important to understand the dynamics of the market right now and make sure that you are executing on purchasing a home when you are really the most comfortable. And it's just our job to educate and to make sure that people understand what is a very, you know, complicated process, and that they kind of identify when the timing is going to be right for them.
Yeah, and I think some buyers, you know, at first when they start hearing this type of stuff from us, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like what the heck are we dealing with?" And we're not afraid of taking somebody through the process and having them lose a couple times to get a like fully write an offer to purchase, make an offer, and have it get rejected. I mean, it's a good part of the process to go through to really understand. I think it also validates a lot of the things that we're talking about, which are not fun things for us to explain or consult you on.
Right.
However, you know, losing a house that you really like and then seeing another house come on, you may react a little bit differently. And there's been numerous situations in the last 18 months where we've had to lose two, three, four times before getting that accepted offer. And I know it's a lot for people to stomach. And like, I think we both agreed, like, if you can't, you know, psychologically deal with this type of pressure in an environment, I don't blame you. It's not fun. We're not trying to tell you that you should do that. We're actually trying to
Right.
talk you out of it. But the amazing thing to me is that there's still a ton of people, after going through and being very diligent on explaining these topics, they still want to buy a house. So, Adam, I appreciate you sharing some tips on how to actually navigate this dynamic that we're dealing with. We've got to work together to get people in the winner's circle, help them, you know, actually experience, you know, home ownership. I know it's a big deal for both of us and our whole teams. And if you have any questions, you'll have Adam Cook's information below, where you can reach out to him to talk about the pre-approval process or any other questions that you might have. Take care.
Thanks, man.